Hey guys, Kevin here. So today on Joe Rogan's podcast, his guest, who is a former Navy SEAL, started talking about a civil war happening here in America. And I want to show you guys some of the clips from this show and really get into what he said on the program, because on this channel, I talk a lot about how we are seeing this culture war in America sort of morph into a soft civil war. And I also talk about how I believe it will eventually become a hot civil war, that things will continue to get worse, that elections will become more punitive. For instance, if the Democrats win in 2020, they will try to take vengeance on us for electing Trump and pass sweeping legislation to try to undo the border controls and everything else that Trump has put in. And I think that America cannot exist if we continue down this path. And it looks like the establishment is hell-bent on taking us down that path. So let's watch what his guest had to say, and I'll get into what he's right about and what he's wrong about, and we'll talk about some of the situations that might play out over the next years or maybe even next few months.
And this idea that you're going to be able to suppress people by attacking them and hitting them with bike locks and not letting them speak at universities that you're protesting at, it's madness, and it's so confusing because it's not indicative of what I always thought of when I thought about left-wing people. I thought they were peace-loving people or well-educated, and instead you're getting these people that are from their fucking computer, they're calling for violence. Like, you don't know what violence is.
So I disagree with Joe Rogan on a lot of issues, but one thing he has been good about is calling out this insanity we're seeing from the left. He's absolutely right that the left are no longer able to engage their political opposition. They slander us with false accusations of racism or sexism or any other buzzword. He's also right that they use positions of power to try to censor us, and even worse, they use their positions in the organizations like the media to try to belittle us and set a narrative that causes more division. We've seen this with stories like Covington Catholic, where they demonize these kids for being conservatives and supporters of Trump, and they completely lie about who they are. And now we're seeing it with Jussie Smollett, where they set a narrative that this was a hate crime, that these Trump supporters are out hunting brown people. All of that turns out to be a hoax, and now they're completely silent about it. And this is all going to come to a head. I mean, the violence is getting worse and worse day by day. Just today, I heard about two stories. One was a kid with his mother at a van store in the mall, and the son was accosted by the clerk at the van store because he was wearing a Trump t-shirt, and the clerk actually cursed him out in front of his mother. The other situation I read about today was a man in Bowling Green, Kentucky, who was actually assaulted for wearing a Make America Great Again hat and had a gun pulled on him by some crazed leftist who asked him, "Do you want to die?" And making me proud, as usual, the Trump supporter said, "Go ahead and do it, punk." So thank God this Trump supporter was not shot by this deranged leftist. In fact, the police were called and they arrested the man shortly after. They also took this picture of the Trump supporter. No, I'm joking, that's not him. But the balls on that guy, I gotta give him a round of applause. But guys, it's all of this stuff combined that's creating this tinderbox. And people ask me, Kevin, why do you think we're headed towards civil war? We're not there yet. But it doesn't take much, guys. Historically, wars have been started over much less. It could be a Jussie Smollett type incident where, we start to see riots with groups like Black Lives Matter. Then they start picking off police officers. It's happened before. Or it could be an incident like this where, a Trump supporter is shot or a group of Trump supporters are shot. And then people decide to start taking the law into their own hands. It only took one assassination to launch the world into World War I and wipe out 1/4 of the world's population. So keep that in mind, guys. This is serious stuff.
Well, and the thing is, too, from what I've seen, it didn't start with the bike locks, right? It started with, shout this person down.
Yes.
And then it's like fist fights. And then they're throwing rocks. And then it's bike locks. And now I hear people, because the theory of we need a revolution in this country, you're like, let's pump the brakes, homeboy. Right?
Yeah. Well, first of all, here's what we need. We need camaraderie. We need to be nice. This is more important than anything. We need to be calm with each other. This idea that yelling people down stops anything. You're just going to make people yell louder on the other side. That shit does not work. That's not how human beings operate. If you want human beings to appreciate your perspective, find the things that you agree on and work towards like a better humanity. Work towards a better, more loving way of interacting with each other. This is possible while disagreeing. And this is one of the most important things I think that we could ever express in terms of how to communicate with each other. You don't have to shout people down. Like the best way to do it is to try to figure out the points that you can agree on, find out what you disagree on, and find out why you disagree on it. And you're always going to get bad actors, right? You're always going to get people that are in there that they don't care, they're not reasonable, they just want to win. There's a giant problem with that kind of communicating because it's so absolute. It's my way or the highway. Like that's where violence comes from. That's where real physical conflicts, that's where they come from, when there's no way to negotiate, there's no way to communicate outside of that.
So this is one of those moments where I think Joe is smoking too much of that pot he's always talking about, where he brings up this false narrative that the far left and the far right are equally to blame for what's happening right now, and that is completely untrue. I consider myself far right. I know lots of people who are considered to be far right as it gets, and not one of them are afraid to engage someone on the left in political debate. Not one of them are trying to censor somebody on the left, and none of them, as far as I know, have lashed out with violence towards somebody on the left. Now, you can't say the same about the far left. And as far as us getting together and singing Kumbaya and healing America, that is impossible. And that is because there are two forces that have aligned with the left that will stop this from ever happening. So the first group that want to prevent us from getting along and who are really controlling the left, not just here in America, but throughout the West right now, you could call them the globalists or Fabian socialists or technocrats. These are people who want centralized power. They want to take more and more freedoms away from the individual. They want to have a very regimented economy, and they want to control consumption. They use a lot of the legislation on the left back, like the environmental legislation, to try to control how we live and where we can live. These people are absolutely evil. They are completely against nationalism and populism, which says everything you need to know. I mean, if you're a person and you live in a nation, you should be a nationalist. If you're a person and you're part of the populists, you should be a populist. But today's left don't seem to get that, and that's because they have these people controlling everything they hear, everything they see. And if you have a bunch of corporations telling you how to think, and they're using television comedy shows and movies to push their propaganda, you should be questioning that stuff. And they don't seem to get that. So that's our first roadblock. The second group that will get in the way of any common ground between the right and the left are the Marxist left. These are the people like Ocasio-Cortez, you can think ANTIFA, some of these college professors. These are people who have allied themselves with some really strange bedfellows. They've allied themselves with radical Islamists. They've allied themselves with these globalists, all to sort of get their agenda pushed through, which is to undermine America, to undermine our Bill of Rights, to undermine our free market system or what's left of that. And these people have a history of violence towards anybody who they consider to be a reactionary. And especially when you talk about the cultural Marxism that's now come into play too, these people are very dangerous, and they will never allow us to have a time where we go back to this sort of friendly discourse in America. As long as those people are around, as long as they are allied with the people they are allied with right now, there's no hope. And that's why I find it very interesting that this guy on Joe Rogan's podcast said, we will not see a revolution in this country, because really, instead of a civil war, we would need a revolution.
I just think I don't know, bizarre is not the right word. I think it's sad that the vast majority, from, again, my opinion, what I see is people who are identifying with shit you can see on a street sign.
Yeah.
Like left or right. Like
Right.
You're telling me that as a species, that's as nuanced as we can get. You want to completely define yourself and your ideology and your beliefs by something literally you can see just driving your car. Turn left, turn right. It's just, I don't understand it. I don't, it's the exact opposite world to go back to, getting out of the military and just kind of entering into the world. I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah.
So I felt the way this guy did when I got out the military, but that was probably because Obama had been elected president, and so I definitely didn't recognize what was going on anymore. Here's the thing, guys. I know people like him, all right? My buddy Adam Kokesh, who, by the way, sent me this awesome book today. It's his own book signed personally by him. It's worth the read. Check it out, guys. Freedom. Adam's running for president as a libertarian. He's also a veteran, and he's also somebody who thinks he's above the two-party paradigm. And, we could all be above that two-party paradigm if it was the traditional two parties. If we were traditional Republicans and traditional Democrats, we could budge on issues, but that's not the case anymore. It's no longer about Republican versus Democrat, not really. We might identify as those things, but it is about people who want a country, people who want a sovereign nation state, and to be able to live and let live, versus the people who want authoritarianism, the people who want to destroy the nation state, who want to centralize power and keep that power in the hands of a few political elites and destroy everything that we love, everything that makes this country what it is. And when it's broken down into those two camps, there's no escaping it. You are not above it.
Makes no sense to me. It makes me extremely uncomfortable. I hate hearing people calling for violence.
I know, and especially calling for violence when it's not necessary against Americans. What you had to deal with in the military has to be the most intense form of conflict that's available on planet Earth. The most intense form of conflict is war. That's the real conflict. That's real consequences. You've suffered them physically. You've seen countless friends suffer them physically. That's the real shit. So when you're seeing people from universities, from these coddled environments, and these people with a really and completely ignorant perspective as to what the actual consequences of violence are, calling for it, it's just bananas.
On one hand, I'm glad that they haven't experienced it, because I can tell that they haven't just by the way that they're acting. And I'm glad that they didn't have to do that. But on the other one, it's a tough pill to swallow, because I just don't understand. War is it's about as high consequence as you can get, for sure. Like I said, it resets your perspective. And the last thing that I would ever want to see is that here on the streets of the U.S. Like I can't even imagine how destructive. Well, it would destroy our country for sure. But I can't figure out the route out of where we are. So people are calling for violence, right? And you got other countries trying to incite, get groups together. What's the navigatable route out of that?
Mushrooms.
Okay, I hadn't considered that route.
It's the only way.
So I would say something, but I actually agree. Mushrooms are excellent, and I'm not joking. Look, there are a lot of veterans out there who have PTSD, and they're thinking about taking their lives. Sadly, I know lots of veterans who have killed themselves, and it's terrible. And I will tell you guys to try anything, including mushrooms. I know that they have a healing power to them when it comes to combat stress. I've tried them myself. It's not a long-term solution, but I've heard people say that microdosing works very well. So, guys, you have value after your military service. Believe me, you can do so much with your lives. And I get emotional just talking about this stuff. But anyway, this guy brings up a point that I want to touch on. he says, what's the way out of this? And that's the $1 million question, because I don't think there is a way out of this. Not that I can see. I've talked about us breaking away, us moving into one concentrated area in each state where we can take over the local government and then challenge the left if they take back federal control. But I think they would use their activist judges and their corporations that they control to try to continue to oppress us. And they would use laws like fair housing to stop us from organizing in that way. And let's face it, the left have never just let their enemies walk away. They have never allowed any dissenting voices to exist. And the scary part is when we talk about books like 1984, George Orwell, when he wrote that book, he was writing from the perspective of somebody who had spent time with the Fabian Socialist Society in England. And these things that they talked about, that's what he wrote about. And now, decades later, these things are no longer science fiction. They are reality. And that is the level of authoritarianism we are facing.
Because so far, other than Charlottesville, that time that guy ran over that woman with a car, we're seeing most of this violence being at least somewhat contained to fisticuffs, right? And, the professor that hit that guy with a bike lock, and there's a few other instances of people getting knocked out and punched and hit with sticks. We haven't seen mass shootings and murder. But
I'm sorry, what's that, Joe?
With sticks. We haven't seen mass shootings and murder, but God, we haven't seen mass shootings and murder, but
God damn it, that shit's close. It's
especially
close.
when they're doing rallies and people are like, let's do an open carry rally, and everybody show up in their operator chic apparel with. I look at the pictures of that. I'm like, okay, you have a lot of stuff. First off, that's on fucking backwards. I'm like, okay, you have all the tools, but you obviously don't practice with them.
Yeah.
But the danger of just, what's the next step? First, we're just gonna, we're gonna wear all of our stuff. All right. Well, if it started at Fist and then went bike locks and then went show up with your Civil War gear.
Right.
What's the next step after that?
Shooting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't want to get involved in that.
Well, you picked a good spot where you're at in Montana.
Where I live does not suck.
Yeah, hang out there and move in once the first few rounds have been fired. The dust starts to settle. The
problem is I would want to come off the bench.
Of course.
But the problem is if that happens, and I guarantee you I'm not the only one that feels like that. I'm going to get involved. And it's going to be a serious problem for those individuals because I'd give my military career a C across the board, average. There's absolutely nothing spectacular about my career. I've done more than some, way less than others. But I've sacrificed enough that I'm not going to allow those people to tear us apart. But it's the last thing on earth that I want to do. But if they put me in that position, I know that myself and many other people who are in that same boat are going to get involved. And I don't know if that's going to help the problem, but it's going to get ugly pretty fast.
So I don't know where this guy stands, but I guess he's pretty far right. And even though this guy took some digs at threepers for going to these open carry rallies, those people are no different from him. And I think maybe he was just trying to seem like a moderate talking to Joe Rogan, but he's not above this conflict. And he even said so at the end. He said that he doesn't want it to happen, but if it happens, he'll go after the people who are hell-bent on destroying America, taking away our freedoms, our sovereignty, and that's where all of us stand. So we're no different here. We don't want a conflict, but we are prepared for one, and we will do a lot of damage if they force us into one. And, they are trying to. I can tell you, they struck me this week, guys. They tried to silence me again. They shut down my Patreon, and they shut down my YouTube channel with a bunch of strikes over a video of me filming Antifa at a rally. And they reported my video because in the background, somebody was playing a song on a boombox, and they reported it for copyright violation of the song playing in the background. So that's the lengths these people will go to try to shut us down. And that sucks because, we do all right here, and I don't like to ask for money, but As we Cajuns say, it's lagniappe when you guys do donate to the channel. And there's some things I want to do next year, like put together a conference. And I want some other people involved, so you guys can reach out to me. But do a conference somewhere where a bunch of us on the right can get together for a few days and talk about real solutions and plan some action, activist work, that kind of thing. So I set up a PayPal now. It's paypal.me and then /Hail Hydra 1, and that's it right there. So anyway, you can send money to that. It's a lot easier than Patreon. It's none of the garbage that comes along with these sites. Anyway, like and share this video. I'm out. I'm still taking the medicine for my back too, so I'm a little drowsy. Yeah. So if I sound like, yeah, whatever. I'm out.